Feed me more. Welcome to Conversation with the Big Guy. I am the Big Guy Ryback, and I'm sitting here with the one, Pat Buck.
Hey everybody, this is Pat Buck. I'm your co-host for the evening and every other fucking episode we've recorded. We're knocking a lot of these out. It's, we'll break the fourth wall. We've been recording, just drinking beers and recording a shitload of content.
We're doing what we do on a daily basis, like we said with Voxer, but we're now recording a lot of our conversations, and we're having fun and just kind of letting people in.
So I think we should be about 4 weeks in, and we've talked about just selfishly ourselves. We should promote. You're always supposed to promote things professionally in the beginning, so I will promote. The beer's getting me. Feedmemore.com.
It's only your second one, Buck.
I know, right? Bit of a lightweight. WrestleProOnline.com. I got some pretty. If you're a fan, if you've never heard of that, just come see our shows, New York, New Jersey. And CreativeProWrestling.com if you want to be a wrestler, because I train up-and-coming hopeful wrestlers. Yes. Where were we last time? We're just telling a story, one big story.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to, essentially, I feel we're just kind of catching, we tell everyone the first one, where I was at with the WWE, that last, essentially, year there. And now kind of just catching everybody up on my career and your career and our lives and how we have gotten to where we are right now, because, and I feel like it's very important. What I wanted to I didn't want to get into it on last episode because I feel like that one, just the stories there alone are enough. But in the middle of all that was the book The Secret, which I've talked about many different times, and just how important that book was to changing my mindset, and a mindset I used to have when I was a child, and I'd lost that through experiences and just our society, and I fell out of touch with who I really was, and that book kind of reminded me who I was and who I am. And the creation of the Ryback, nice burp there from the Buck, the creation of the Ryback character at this low point in my life that ended up, being the best thing that ever happened to me. But I remember, just being a server at Smokey Bones, and Luke Gallows, who at the time was
I think before you even say about Brother Gallows given the book, we were we were having fun working, but at the same time we didn't really move. We moved in together because we fucking not had to, but we're like
I think I had to. Financially I had to sell my truck, and I love that truck, and that was why after I got back to WWE and my first year and doing pretty good, I went back out and bought a truck for myself to kind of get what I lost.
That's great. Yeah.
And because I always loved that Nissan Titan that I had. I went and got a Dodge Ram eventually because I love Dodge, but that was hard for me. I remember gas prices were really expensive back then in Louisville. It was like gas was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. That's right.
I couldn't afford to keep. I remember freaking out, like trying to make my gas last from going to work in the gym and home, and not being able to go that much further past that. And it was frightening. And eventually, I had to go to an Altima that was, much more, gas efficient.
So, but I remember, because at that time, and I've said this on the past podcasts that people listened, which I assume they did if they're listening now, we had, I was at a point, this is about 2007-ish, I'm going to guess, but I was in OVW by that point by like maybe 2.5, 3 years, and it was kind of really waning on me because a lot of guys, if they had potential, they'd move there, they'd bust their butt, maybe something would happen to them 6 months, maybe in a year.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm 3 years in, and then I do another 1.5 years. So I'm really down the dumps.
It's not easy.
No. I had a really bad breakup with a girl. You were still in your post-release period.
Yeah.
You had a bad breakup with a girl. So we moved in. We found, I was maneuvering around Louisville, and I was like, look, dude, I found this place. I think rent.
Governor's Way, I believe, was
Governor's Way. In maybe it wasn't the worst part of Louisville, but it wasn't really nice. But I think rent was like, wasn't it like $520?
It was like, yeah, it was very cost friendly, and I think that was kind of the time we really started. We knew each other before that and from Smokey Bones, but I think once we moved in together and kind of like, I think that's when the walls came down a little bit.
I remember a couple times where I'd be and this may get a little personal for me, but when I came to Louisville, I was in a serious relationship, and that fell to shit. And then I was in a new one, and I'm like, this one's the one. And she was crazy too.
Yeah.
But I remember being in my car, and it was a snowstorm, and I remember I called you, and you're like, yeah, I gotta get out of here too. Like we were just like, these fucking girls.
There's something about when you're down like that too, and being alone is, at that point, was the worst thing.
Yeah.
For where I was at mentally. And, if there's anyone out there listening and going through a bad breakup and, in being alone is hard, you need to put yourself around people.
We weren't over it either. It wasn't like we were still, I guess you can, not obsessed with the other person, but we just weren't over them.
Yeah.
And so
it was very early on in that period. And I had already, we both had our personal stories and our things going on. It was just it was a lot at one time going on. And it was just kind of coincidental. We were going through it at the same time in a little different ways, obviously, but like ultimately going through the same thing. So
I remember we both kind of felt like we were kind of probably failures. We move into this fucking place.
That was the thing too with the ex-girlfriend for me, whom I haven't talked to her in a while, but we'd developed a friendship after that. But after we had mutually broken up, it got really bad. And I remember her mother, like her dad had died. He was in a plane crash, and it was a horrific story. And I always felt really, really bad for her. But
that was down there?
Louisville, yeah.
Whoa.
He was, I don't know if it was for like, it wasn't UPS, but it was something like that, like shipping, and he was in something. And the mom, I ended up, she asked me to move in with her, and I left. That's when I was living with Cody Rhodes, and I went and moved in with her, and was essentially, I was getting up early and taking the baby to daycare and going and serving all day, and she didn't work for quite a while. Then she eventually got a job, and I had my hands full, but I was out of wrestling a lot longer than I wanted. I kind of got caught up in this role of, you know what I mean, in this family life.
Yeah, you're a dad.
That I didn't necessarily know I was going to get into, but it just kind of happened, and I committed to it, and I did my very best. But her mother kind of looked at me, and at this point in time, and I can say this because I'm not in WWE now, the Chris Benoit stuff had just happened.
Yeah,
and in that tragic story, and so and I'm this big jacked up guy, and at that point in time, the media and everything they were making about the Chris Benoit story with the steroids and all that. And so her mother started, they had money, and they came for money, and like, and I don't want to say they ever had anything easy, but they had money.
Yeah.
From the incident with the dad and all that, her husband.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So she kind of started putting in the daughter's head, like, this guy's a loser. This guy, he's not he's like this. These wrestlers are bad news.
Sure.
And her mom paid for her house, but it's all a blessing in disguise, because like I needed that to end up to get free to be able to have time to go back to wrestling. And it was. I remember she made some really, really rude comments to me that I was a failure and that I was never going to make it in wrestling. And I remember that hurt me more than anything in that point, and kind of was like, I needed that though, because I felt so betrayed, because I had stopped that for her and that baby. And then when she threw that in my face, it was, fuck you, watch what I go and do. And I went and did it. And like, she never will ever bring that up ever again. But like, that was the fuel.
You occasionally talk to her now?
It's been a while, but like it's probably been over a year. But she used to always text me and talk like
casual.
Yeah,
wow,
just casual. But it was just one of those things, and we're young at the time, and people say things all the time when they get angry, but it was, thank God she did, because I needed that little spark right then to like, I could fucking do this. I'm gonna, not only for myself, but to prove you and you know what I mean.
So that goes hand in hand with. Now we're living at this like shithole. It wasn't that bad. We had some pretty peculiar people walk by our window, Remember that a couple times? Drug dealers and like,
it was. And I look back and we remember the laundry room was down, and we'd walk outside. You had to walk out there to go to the laundry room, and everything was a little run down. But I mean, I enjoyed. I remember.
I enjoyed it too.
It was a good time. We didn't have a lot. We were going day to day essentially and whatnot. But
I remember one time in particular. I remember there was a couple times post breakup. We both were fucking mopey dopes. We were both like really upset, and we both wanted to be back with our partners.
Yeah,
and we were both just like, oh, woe was me, woe was me. I remember you were having fucking nightmares about her.
Yeah,
you were just like, I do, this is fucking ruining me. We'd still go to work a fucking 10-hour shift, do all this shit. And then it was, now I remember the gallows thing.
Yeah. So. It's funny you say nightmares. During that whole period, my first couple years wrestling, I never was a guy, like I used to have dreams, and I started having nightmares and having these, because my mindset had gotten so negative. I don't have nightmares anymore. Outside, once I started the meditation, and we'll talk about that on another episode on the Holosync by Bill Harris, who's on The Secret, and how that changed my life with my ankle injury and my nerves and all that. And I meditate every day for an hour. Each and every day.
Jesus Christ.
It truly has changed my life, and it's given me control over my thoughts. And that's not to say I still get angry, I still get frustrated and whatnot, but it's allowed me to, I sleep like a baby at night because I'm able to quiet my mind, and meditation has played a huge part in all that. But at that point in time, it was that my circumstances in my life had the things that had happened had overwhelmed me, and even in my sleep I couldn't escape it. Okay. So that's kind of, in the drinking during the day, I couldn't get rid of this. It was not even in my sleep was I safe. So, but eventually, Luke Gallows, who was Festus at the time in the WWE, I think he'd gotten wind that things were not good with me. Yeah. Probably all the guys talking, because for him to come into Smokey Bones, he never would come in there. And I think he wanted to see me, and I believe he came in there for a reason.
You guys were close, right?
We had, in Deep South Wrestling, we lived right next to each other, and we were like the first two down there, and he actually tried out for Tough Enough, $1 Million Tough Enough.
That's right.
So that was our introduction to each other. And, in the wrestling world, it's kind of a small community.
Yeah, sure.
And the guys that and we always, even gone long periods without talking or seeing each other, and it's like we've never missed a beat, as far as like we're the same two people as when we started, and we and he's a character, as everybody knows, and he loves having fun also, and I think that's what kind of always has been our thing, is we like to have fun. He came in though, and he ordered, and he was having lunch, and he goes, "I hate seeing you like this." And I go, "Like what?" Like, I'm in denial. Like, "What do you mean? I'm fucking great. Like, life is good." And he goes, "No, it's not." And he's like, you need to be wrestling. You belong wrestling. You are a wrestler." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do right now. I can't get by. Like, I got to work all the time." And he like at that point in time, I think he was having a little run with Undertaker. That's right. As Festus. Yeah. Things for him, his booking as Festus, that was kind of the high point.
Peak,
during that. And he goes, "I just read this book called The Secret." And he goes, "It has changed the way that I think, and it's helping me a lot." And so he left me a tip for $30 or $25, whatever it was. And there was a bookstore across the street. And he goes, "I want you to go get this book as soon as you can." And it was one of those things. I think I left work that day and just ran across the street and bought it. And then I read that book. When I read it and I went through it, it was so overwhelming, because it made me realize just how negative I was being. I couldn't even, like, a positive thought was such a, oh my God, what is that? Like, I was just so negative and defeated, and I was just ashamed of myself. And reading the book was hard that first time. And I actually had to go, I went and I bought the DVD, and probably used a coupon to make enough money to get the DVD. And I would watch the DVD every night, and I was still drinking really heavily at this time.
Yeah.
But I remember I would read at home. I remember reading and trying to read as much as I could before I would start drinking, to try to really absorb the information. And then I would watch the DVD to kind of subconsciously, even falling asleep with it, just having this reinforcement every single day. And it was a really, really tough process for me to look in the mirror and to realize just how fucked up my life was at the time. And like, I need it. And there's parts of the book and where some people look at and laugh at and whatnot, but it's a mindset. And it's not that, oh, I believe I'm going to make $1 million and $1 million is just going to fall on your lap. It's a mindset. And when your mind believes something, the work ethic will truly follow if you really believe in it.
Yeah.
But I bought in. And I think, as you know, is if you buy into something, it'll work. If you buy in and give it your heart and soul.
I just remember, I mean, because a lot of people here talk about this, but like I lived it with you. So like I knew that like you came out and you know, you're going from this dude, you're like, I've been having nightmares. And then one day you're like, dude, so get that. And you told me the story and you told me about the book. And I was like, I'm interested. Let me know because I need help with some way. I don't know if you remember this. I had a fucking hypnotist come to the house.
Yeah, I remember all this.
I was so depressed and I was so strung up and like, which didn't work. And I just didn't, I was trying everything I could.
Yeah. Anything to try to improve upon the current situation.
Yeah. Because I was still in school, still struggling with wrestling. It wasn't like any, you know, I was in a point where I never fully kind of stopped wrestling, but there was times where I slowed down a little bit, but I was still in the mindset, hang in there, you're going to get a job soon. Something will happen. And nothing was happening. And then you told me about this. I remember I think I saw the DVD first before I actually bought the book. And it wasn't, you know, a lot of people hear the secret stuff and they kind of, I think, equate it to people who are almost like Bible thumpers where they're just like, oh, magic mumbo jumbo. And it's like, no, it's a little bit like, to me, it's common sense where a lot of the most successful people I've been around or know, they don't really talk about the negative things. They're always just focused on positive things, or dare I say abundance, or dare I say like things are always kind of going well for them. And things just made sense to me. I'm like, let me make an attempt at this. And I remember shortly thereafter, we both had vision boards where we put our goals. And I remember this distinctly. It was actually kind of weird because you told me about this. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to try to.
I know what you're going to say too. And before I just came here, I read that board. I still have that same gray board.
Wow.
And no shit, I kid you not, I wish I would have taken a picture. I'll send it to you. Everything that I have on this board that was written, this one, I've changed it several times from that first one when you saw it in the Governor's Way, that apartment. But that I haven't touched this board. I have it in the meditation and massage room. I've left it the same. I've kept every vision board. I don't change them. I go buy new ones because I think it's important to see whoa, these all came true. Everything on there has pretty much come true. And I look at it and I just smile. But to go on with your story about that.
I just remember I was like, because you had a board in your room. I'm like, fuck, that's kind of cool.
That's the one thing I got from that book.
Yeah. I'm like, let me try this out. And I remember going to Walmart and I'm like looking around for like these boards, and literally it's just like a couple dry erase boards, and one literally, it sounds so bullshit, but just fell off the shelf. Yeah. Like it was on the low, and I'm like, I guess that's the one I'll take. Took that, did all this stuff, and
for people listening, a vision board is essentially just a dry erase board that you can just write your goals on and whatnot. Anything you want, it could be whatever you want it to be, but it's simply just writing out your goals and hanging it up. And when you do that subconsciously, things kind of fall into place because you remind yourself of why you're living your life.
And you can put images on it. You can do whatever the fuck you want. It's whatever, you know. And I remember at first, you know, and I felt like, okay, it got me to a healthy point. It got you to a healthy point. But when you got rehired, I was like, oh, fuck. Because I remember like...
I still remember that.
Shortly thereafter, I remember I was like, look, man, like, because I was still involved. And I was like, dude, this was right after WWE pulled their contract or pulled their deal with OVW.
OVW, yeah.
And there was a lot of guys, not that they were fake or phony, but I mean, the contracted guys went down south to FCW, which was early NXT, but it was really FCW in Tampa. And OVW stayed as a business because they were separate. Now, I remember a lot of guys that moved to OVW said, fuck this, and left. I wanted to stay there because I was like, okay, I can move and maybe get different experience on the card. And I was one of the more senior guys.
Your role would probably
increase.
Be a lot better once the contracted talent was up, because you'd be a guy they could use a lot more.
And I remember old Roadkill was in charge.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, look, man, like, come back to wrestling. You're like, okay. And you came with me to a house show, and I was like, I asked Roadkill, I was like, let me work.
Who I just found out, by the way, through JD Michaels, who does my weight belts, and he's always been the guy that's made my singlets, and he's always been a good guy to me.
Sure, I love JD.
He's always been in kind of that circle of guys, and I talk to him a lot on Voxer still with everything. And we just recently were talking about this. He was telling me, I didn't know this, that Roadkill didn't like me, and he was saying, because we remember the guy, there was the guy out. That schmuck who, if he's listening, fuck you. That's one of the few people that in wrestling that has never been just Yeah,
Okay.
he doesn't even deserve to be mentioned. So whoever edits the show, edit his name out. He doesn't even deserve the recognition. Who's always just been unfairly just a fucking mark, and I just never have appreciated that because I've never been nothing but good, especially amongst wrestlers. And JD was kind of telling me some of the stories, and I go, "Wow, that's news to me." But I remember you kind of telling me there were some guys because I remember when I came back. I think there were some comments being made or something.
Yeah, there was a lot. Like, again, so this goes into.
I don't want to go off on
No. This is a fair point to bring up because like there was a time where you were away from it, and and fans will be very interested in this. WWE plucked their developmental deal, and it was because of Sean and Hunter. They came down, and there was also a lot of things. They never wanted to be in Louisville to begin with.
No.
That's what it was. And there was a lot of issues there, and I think OVW did a great job with some things, but then there were some things as time went on.
Yeah.
Didn't go so great.
Developmental has evolved tremendously from what it was, and
completely. So, but there was a point where when the deal got plucked, they gave people positions of power. One of them was Joey Mercury, one of them was Dinsmore, and one of them was Roadkill. And Roadkill was really hands-on. Was practically the booker man. I had my ups and downs with him because there was times where we were respectful, working each other, got along great. Then there's times where I think he was a little salty because he was my bodyguard in developmental.
Yeah.
And I was like, he was contracted, I wasn't. Then there was times where I'm friends with Nova and that's his fucking enemy. And like, it's just weird shit.
Just stupid
petty
bullshit.
high school bullshit. Yep. He also hated JD, but that was later. Like, but I remember going to him in the Ali Akbar thing. I had resentment towards that guy too. I caught up with him a couple years ago or a year ago in Global Force. And there was water under the bridge, but there was times that you're talking about where I was kind of like, what the fuck is this? Where guys got stuck in OVW almost like they want to be the best at practice.
Yeah.
They want to be the best guy and in OVW, and they didn't care about their success outside. They didn't care about indies. They didn't care about making it. They didn't care about anything but just being the best inside that fucking place, and that's just no good. But I remember I was like, look, can I please and he's like, okay, you guys can work each other. And I remember I got in trouble. I remember two things about the match.
This was Evansville, Indiana, I believe.
Yeah,
I think I'm booked there soon.
I remember two things about this where one, I forgot a spot. It was like an early on spot where something didn't make sense, and I fucked it up.
I remember I was the one that had it wrestled, and
but you did it right, and I did it wrong, and I was like,
which everyone probably thought it was my fault. A big dumb ride, I believe I was the Gorilla Man at this point, wearing fur trunks that were too small for me.
God,
if I have these at home in my wrestling drawer, I promise you, everyone out there, I will post them. Not in them because they don't fit me. They didn't fit me at the time. They certainly don't fit me now. But it's just true story. I was the Silverback before that. And I remember Nova had tried to, Simon Dean was in charge of developmental, kept calling me after I'd been fired. And I was just like, fuck this. I don't want to talk to anybody there. They fired me. It's over with, blah, blah, blah. And I just ignored the phone calls. But supposedly he was calling me to get my blessing or approval if they could use the Silverback name with Mark Henry. And if anybody out there remembers, Mark Henry had a run as a Silverback.
That's funny.
That was on main TV after I was in developmental, and that's not seen by that many people. So when I came back, he was done using the Silverback name, or it was too fresh off of it or something, where I was like, well, I'm a gorilla. My nickname was Silverback. I'm the Gorilla Man.
Yeah.
And I
was never a fan of Gorilla Man.
No. And I believe that was a Cody Rhodes. That was like Dusty Rhodes Shockmaster was the Gorilla Man. So that was...
That's funny.
We need to find, and again, this is going off on a tangent a little bit, but it's all right. There is footage somewhere out there of Gorilla Man. Remember, was it Josie? What was her TNA name? Sojourner Bolt.
Sojourner Bolt, yeah.
She had that gig in Cincinnati where they'd go down there and do the wrestling videos.
Yes.
And there's footage of Gorilla Man out there, drunk, hungover on Jägermeisters, out partying the night before. It was like $500 to go into
Customs wrestling,
dude. And it was nothing like, but it was me beating the shit out of two female wrestlers, and to this day,
it's a big market
as Gorilla Man. So there's somebody out there right now that has this footage, and it was nothing. It was straight up wrestling.
Yeah,
but it was violent. It was what CM Punk says I did to him to these girls.
Oh my God. From
Sorry.
recording this, I totally forgot you did indie bookings or a couple like after, and you did a custom. That's big in the indie realm of that's funny. That's fucking funny.
Yeah, I've had my few, share of things.
I remember distinctly that match after Roadkill's like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
I don't think you German suplexed
I gave
me.
you 3 German suplexes.
Yeah.
I gave you the old Benoits.
I wanted to take him because
Yeah.
I was like, I need to get in there and bump around, and I got to feel.
And
like,
he scorned me. I'm like, come on, man. There's like fucking 30 people here. Like, we're just having fun.
I was just trying to get my wind to get back in the ring and take some bumps and wake back up and to get my footing back under me. And I'd been out of the game for a little bit, and we're friends and going out there and whatever, psychology wise. But honestly, it's not that crazy. Guys are doing it left and right in WWE.
Yeah.
They have 160-pound guys beating 300-pound guys like it's nothing in 2 minutes. So like we were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I guess so. Fuck. That is something that went away. Not to knock or not knock anyone, but like I always thought it was really weird with independent guys when they would be not small of frame, but still not big dudes, and they could do all these power moves. And I'm like, what are you gonna do when you wrestle someone that's you can't do that to, but they get all this independent cred on being this like powerhouse or this creative wrestler. And I'm like, you guys don't know what it's like when you're 5'10" and 200 pounds and you're the smallest guy in a system. Like it baffles me, but things have changed so much. Where
That's one thing that really bothers me with WWE today. That they've so in the UFC and whatnot, you have weight classes, and they have weight classes for a reason. And you put Conor McGregor in the ring with Brock Lesnar, That's a huge difference. Huge difference. And the whole illusion of wrestling is that it is real. And now it is. I feel like that's one part of the psychology game we have thrown out, and we've said no. This 160-pound guy. It's almost like being bigger there and being talented is a punishment on certain levels with certain guys.
Yeah.
And a guy like Sheamus, who everyone has their opinion about Sheamus, but Sheamus works his ass off. And
I think Sheamus is great. I don't know.
And I like Sheamus, and me and him talk occasionally, and the guy goes out there, and if he's ever been tired, I've never seen it. He gives it his all, and we've had some battles out there, and we always talked about we never really got to have a real program on TV. But you have guys out there, he's a big fucking guy, and he is a brute, and he goes out there and he is violent and he is vicious. And I've worked him, I can't tell you how many times, and he has never ever hurt me once. And I have always thoroughly enjoyed working him. But you have him going out there and it's almost like that. The size doesn't matter anymore, which it should still, though. It should. And that's one thing that really bothers me, and that you're doing this move. And no, Ziggler used to always get on me, and it sunk in eventually. Your one punch, it's not like throwing 5, you throw 1. And like he's always been ahead of it, and he's known, but it gets thrown out the window up there so much where you do this and that, and the guy's up and running around 2 moves later.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and it's not to sound like old curmudgeons with wrestling, but I just think there's an art to apply it, like that thing. Like if I was wrestling, or Ziggler's wrestling, it's like, we can unload on you. It's not going to do much damage, but you hit us once, we will go down.
Yeah.
And we can figure out ways to build stories around that. It's like, I don't know. It's very
guys like Mark Henry and Big Show though, and like Big Show is an attraction. Mark Henry can still be an attraction, but they have to be booked accordingly. You can't just put them in the mix and file them in and out like everybody else. And I feel like that's another problem in the system that they do with everyone. And it throws they just take the brand, and you just make, if you're not in that little circle, you're just all interchangeable. And the fans see through that bullshit, and then it makes it much harder when they need to try to do something with you again. People are they see through it.
I mean, there's things that they just don't make a whole lot of sense, but I guess I'm okay with it, kind of. I love the cruiserweight stuff coming back. It's
great.
But at the same time, it's like cruiserweight stuff's coming back, but then it's like, then how do you explain those select cruiserweights that are going to get this monstrous spot or opportunity and ignore the fact that they're cruiserweight and they can hold heavyweight championships?
Like who's that?
I mean, people talk. Like I'm a huge fan of Balor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, or even guys that are.
We've talked about it.
Yeah. I mean, even Ziggler falls in that category. You know what I mean? Like I'm saying, like he technically would be a cruiserweight.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know. But at the same time, I'm just a fan of it because at least it's going to get people more jobs and more opportunities and things like that. But it's just like, sometimes I think the overall planning of things could be just a little bit better.
It'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
And they can all hold themselves accountable from the top and make it better. And they should, because they're supposed to be the best wrestling company in the world, and start acting like it. It's that simple. But not to get off point, back to the subject.
I don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
It was The Secret and the creation of Ryback.
So I got to a better place. I think we both collectively got to a better place. And I remember distinctly, it was like summer of 2008, I believe, because I was in a new, healthy relationship, and I was wrestling all the Six Flag Kentucky Kingdom shows.
Yeah.
And I had a great time doing those things, and they were very packed houses, and
Always a good time.
yeah, always fun. You're in the theme park all day, then you eat catering and you wrestle, and it was great. And but I remember one time I came back, and you were at home, and that's when you had your epiphany of
Yeah. So I'm sitting at home drinking, watching Burnett's Vodka once again with Diet Mountain Dew. And Terminator, we'd always watch WWE on demand at that time before WWE
That's
Network.
right, yes.
And the classics on demand. And I remember Terminator 2 was on TV one night, and I
a little bit of a mark boy for.
I always loved Arnold, and I just think his a great success story and human being, and I've always admired just the work ethic, which we need to tell. The funny Jericho always loved. I told it on his podcast the story where Justin Roberts in Brooklyn, Arnold was the guest host.
Yeah.
And I come around the corner, I'm in the singlet, I'm all done up, and like I've already pumped up, and he's in front of the entourage as he's coming down this hallway in Brooklyn, and we just literally come face to face, and it was like the coolest thing ever. And he goes Ryback, and he shook my hand, and he's getting ready. He like looks me up and down, and like nobody was interrupting it, and it was just a natural whatever was in my mind. He was going to compliment the physique, which would have been the go-to. Which for a big guy like me, that's gold. And coming from Arnold, and Justin Roberts just swoops in like a hawk and grabs Arnold, gotta get a selfie. And I like Justin Roberts.
Sure,
but I remember it was one of those things. I was like, you fucking mark. Like, I love Arnold and stuff, but I've never asked anyone for a picture. I've never asked anyone for an autograph, and I never will. And I don't get it.
Sure.
It's a fucking piece of signature on a piece of paper, but other people have meanings. That is just my story. So, and Arnold's crew like grabbed him and like rushed him off.
Really?
Because like he came off like such a crazy fan. I feel like, and I think he got the selfie off, and I like stepped out of the way, so I didn't want to even be seen in it, and I was just like, oh, that fucking sucked, and I just wanted to like have a natural conversation. But going back, I felt like that's important to get that in.
No,
there.
it was important.
I'm sitting at home, and I'm pretty lit up, and I'm probably through the entire bottle at that point, and probably have a dip of Grizzly Wintergreen in at that point, which was a regular thing. And I remember seeing Arnold on TV and whatever scene, and you get to point when you're drinking, like you're bad.
Yeah.
And like this was one of those moments, but it was so bad it was good. And I'm just sitting there, and I don't want to say like delusional or anything like that, but like I probably should have been to bed at that point. And when you add chewing tobacco on top of a lot of alcohol, it puts you in a whole other realm. And anyone who does that knows what I'm talking about. I'm sitting there just like, I'm a Terminator. I'm a machine. And at this point, I have read The Secret numerous times.
Okay.
And it was starting to try to like break through, but it hadn't broken through yet. But with that Burnett's Vodka and that Diet Mountain Dew and whatever scene that was with the Terminator and just something, it had such an impact that it was like, that's what I got from The Secret.
What scene was it? Walking through the mall, coming through lava?
Probably, yeah. It was something, I don't know, but it was so, I was so drunk, I don't remember it, but it wasn't even about that, the movie. It was about the book breaking through from that, and it was, I'm a fucking machine, I'm a Terminator, I set fucking goals, I set missions, and I fucking destroy, and I achieve those motherfucking goals. And I remember sitting there and just repeating it to myself,
hell of a promo,
and started talking to myself. And that's when I started doing promos, because I'd always heard like cut promos, and like I would always be shy, and like,
yeah, this character,
I didn't have that courage. I thought, that's crazy, I'm talking to myself.
Sure.
But that's kind of where it like all, I had my epiphany essentially, and like I broke through to a whole other level. And not that it made me any better as a wrestler or performer, but mentally something happened in that moment right there from that book that on a subconscious level, it fucking finally registered with me, and it was so powerful.
And like I said before too, you're at a point, and I said this from this past podcast, we're both there, we have wrestling on the brain, but you still were removed. You may have done like a match or two, but like I think you finally found something like, okay, you found your goal. You found something to keep you entertained or do something.
It always killed me too with wrestling and being away from it. It wasn't that I lacked confidence. I was so defeated, and expectations were so high for me, and I felt like I'd failed miserably, and I did fail. I didn't live up to those expectations, and I could sit there and say, and it was this from that and this and that and point the finger, and it ultimately came down to being my fault. But those things that happened to me, like I said, it finally all caught up, and then when it hit, and I'm so thankful for that, because it made me who I am. And it might have taken me 5 years longer to get to that point, but I hit, and now I'm way past
at the same time too. I think also wrestling at a young age, or even a lot of guys start different ages and stuff, but I think it's a lot for a person, especially not that it hardens you up having any sort of independent experience at all, but I think even me being there, and I had 4 years experience before I got to OVW.
Yeah.
Neither one of us were ready for the position that comes with being involved in such a company. I think with WWE, the mindset, not so much we had the work ethic, but it was like just the way business is conducted, where it was almost not an immaturity thing, but it's like that break, that time period away, and that I think that's what we're both grateful for. Like when you had the opportunity for later, and what kind of prepared me was like the fact that things weren't going so well, and things were we had to figure shit out.
Yeah.
But I remember coming back and you telling me about that. I'm like, oh, and I remember I had my kind of new girlfriend there, and I was like, I don't know.
Who probably thought I was out of my mind, but you touched on something right there too that I think is really important to talk about, and it's with today's audience. And I feel that like the guys that have that independent experience, I don't know what it is, but it's like, and not that in you want to appeal to the entire audience, but there's a very strong part of a vocal part of the audience that's at every show that knows about the independent scene, and that these guys have put in and paid their dues on that scene. And I feel like sometimes with guys, that are just in the WWE, like me, I came in through the WWE system.
Sure.
I am homegrown from the very beginning. That they sometimes hold that against you.
They do.
And so for me, in like Cody Rhodes leaving, I think Cody had to leave. He was smart enough to know he had to leave with the way things are there right now. And my contract was out. I had to leave. I have my issues with things going on, but I have to leave, and I have to do this. I have to do this for me, because my goal is to be number one and to be my very best. And the way things are there right now, that is not their vision. So I'm going to go out and create that vision for myself and show them, because I feel like that's a very important thing for fans to understand, that it just wasn't like, I'm 34. Guys used to leave there all the time back in the day.
Sure.
And go to other territories. I think just they're the only game in town, or people think so anyways.
Yeah.
And the mainstream wise. But like, no, it's okay to leave and go out and do your thing and do something else. And I feel like this is a very important thing for me to get out there and on the independent scene and show that I can go with any one of these guys and I will exceed. And when I can go in the ring with the guys like Seth Rollins and win over their approval, and they know I could fucking go, and like, I can hang with anybody, if not surpass them. And I want to show them that. And I think this is going to be very important for that.
Cool. We're talking about
the Ryback character, though.
Yeah.
Buck, who still is nursing his second beer, is completely in the tank, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a couple glasses of
you did have the wine. I take that back.
Yeah. But I remember shortly thereafter, you became more involved.
I got a funny Ryback story. As we were talking about the drinking before.
Yeah.
So the Ryback character, I was like, I need to be part Terminator. I need to show this machine. And so that's where I got the red contact and like kind of like the Terminator, like black jeans, like something like Arnold. That I had these, I think I only had no money really. I just had one pair of like black jeans that I was like, oh, these will work.
Yeah.
And like my black wrestling boots.
I remember the gear. I forgot about the jeans.
I got like a Terminator belt with a Terminator logo.
Oh, God.
Like some like cheap $15, $10 belt.
I remember, I don't know, are you going to talk about Danny? Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to talk with Danny, and and this definitely is worth talking about and needs to be talked about. Danny Davis has always believed in me and always.
I got so fucking jealous. It was at Six Flags.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after, and he was such a fan. I was going to say Mark, but it was
he offered to pay for everything,
I know,
by the way.
And I overheard that conversation.
Yeah.
I was in the next trailer getting ready for a match, and Danny is always not been a supporter of me. Just I don't think he ever saw anything in me. So like, I remember hearing that. I'm like, motherfucker, I've been here for 4 fucking years, and he's like, I will buy whatever you need.
And I remember, you know what, this was, and at the point in time, my mindset was starting to change, but I'll never forget this, because I remember you told me about it. I wasn't there for it. So Danny, before this Ryback character, this part Terminator character, I had to go to OVW and show Joey Mercury and Danny the outfit. I had to go there, so I showed up, and the fans hadn't seen me in a year and a half or whatever it was, and I showed up in character. I drove there, which was what the story I was going to tell about the alcohol in a little bit when I first came back. But Joey instantly put it over and was, approval, and I had to go show Danny. And I remember, I think I came back and we started doing, I did a couple like with the Terminator music, and it was working, whatever. Yeah. But they had a meeting, I remember you told me about, where they said, and outside of, I remember you always saying, so you like this guy, remember I showed up to a thing with Elijah Burke one day, there was a class, and you like gave a little speech real quick on me, and you go, this guy's going to be a main eventer in the WWE someday. And I hadn't even gotten that far yet in my head. I was like, whoa, somebody else believes in me too.
Oh, shit.
And I'll never forget it. And Danny and Eugene, Nick Dinsmore, had a meeting with the class, and I wasn't there, where supposedly they said, this guy, we feel he's going to be rehired by WWE, and he could be a main event star, and he can draw money, we feel like, ultimately in the future. Do you remember that?
Maybe.
Because you came back, and I remember I was like, in my head, I was like, whoa, what? And like, Danny, thank you, Danny Davis, if you're out there and you're listening or anybody knows him, thank you for giving me the opportunity and believing in me before I even ultimately believed in me at that level, offering to pay. And I turned it, I go, no, it's all right. I think I got some tax money coming back. And I didn't want to take any money from anybody at that point. And I had them enough money to get the outfit and to kind of you get everything rolling with the Ryback character at OVW.
I just remember, like, we're both down there. I think at the time I was a senior guy. You were back in the mix, and we were both working, and that was a lot of fun too. The OVW TVs, the house shows. I remember we had a stinker of a match in E-Town. I don't know if you remember that. You allowed me to beat the fuck out of you.
This was
you were the baby face.
I was already leaving. I got re-signed by WWE.
Was it that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I lost the loser leaves town match with Anthony Bravado.
Okay.
Blair Moan at the time.
But I remember, like, we were just like at that. I was like, let's fucking.
You were the first guy to. He beat me with the ether. Was it what was it?
That sucked. It was like ether on a fucking towel.
Yeah.
It was like 1940s.
Well, I was a part fucking cyborg, so it's not like he's.
But I remember, like,
why would that work on a cyborg?
The finish of the match was like a ref. I think a ref like got bumped, and this big bad vicious heel. And he was a big dude. And
I need to go back and watch that match.
He worked hard, and he poured ether. And I remember the commentators were putting it over like, "Oh, we could smell it from here."
It was gasoline. I think I was told not to breathe during it.
And he puts it on, and
defeated the almighty Ryback.
But I remember also before that too, we knew Johnny was Laurinaitis. Who was
I did my homework on this, actually.
The head muckety muck was coming back, and I was at OVW for 4.5 years. John Laurinaitis was maybe there 15 times total, and in that whole time span. So him coming there, we pretty much knew somebody probably was going to get a job.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't going to go to this, by the way.
You weren't. I remember you said you're like, should I go to this? I'm like, I don't know. Do you feel ready? You're like, I don't know if I should go. Maybe I should.
I didn't feel like I'd been gone long enough.
Yeah. And you fucking went there, and
I'll never forget that. That's actually, who's to thank for that. I was at that, was it Fitness Factory?
Yeah.
The gym?
Yeah.
And I called Danny and told him I wasn't coming. I think it was the next day. And Elijah Burke, I just happened to run into him, who I hardly would ever see there.
Okay.
And he said something to me. He's like, "You going tomorrow? You gonna get rehired?" And no, I'm not going. I don't want to go. And he cut a promo on me.
Really?
Yeah. And
I always got along with Elijah.
I always did too.
Yeah.
But he essentially said, "You never know when this opportunity is going to come up again." And you know what, Danny? I believe John Laurinaitis never went back there ever since.
He went back there.
It might have been once if he did.
6 months after, when Lupe was hired, and I wrestled him.
And then that was it, though. But after that, I remember, and thank God, whatever he told me, and it lit a fire under my ass. And I went home and I believe I wrote 3 promos. And in the wrestling part, I knew we were going to have to go in there and do a match.
I don't even remember who we
But
wrestled.
the promos, I felt like we're going to be I don't know what it was. It was something instinctually inside of me told me that promos were going to be important. And in knowing Johnny, I did my homework on him, and I remember there was some Terminator stuff, and like I don't know if it was Road Warrior Animal.
Yeah, Animal did a Terminator
gimmick, but I had like kind of did like the history of his family and had it like scanned like that type of promo, like recalling it like a Terminator. And I remember I did the one promo, and after I did it, he immediately says, "Cut a promo right now on this guy on Jericho or something." And I remember I had like 3 promos, and I just cut another promo, and I didn't hesitate. I didn't stop. I didn't freeze anything and everything. Whether it was good or okay, it was good enough. And after I think we did a tag match, and I didn't do anything special.
Yeah, it was almost like he didn't give a shit.
Didn't it didn't matter.
I could tell by the promo. I was sitting there. I was like, he got his job back.
John Laurinaitis has always been a guy who has believed in me and supported me, and we have our history a little bit with the ankle stuff and things, and as we'll talk about that in another time. But he's. If it wasn't
a business
for,
guy, I have my personal issues. He could have hired me, but then again, I'm blessed that I never got hired.
Yeah, you're one of the few guys I feel like who's done very well for himself outside of not going to WWE. And you could have. You had as a referee too at one point, right?
Yeah, when I trimmed down to fucking 175 pounds, that was
be best friends with Mark Carano right now. Your life could be fucking great.
So, but I remember hearing the promo, and I remember that day too. I remember it was very awkward because like. We all looked up to like Eugene and Conway. They were like the local legends there, and they already had their run, and they didn't have jobs at the time. They were released, you had your match, you had your promos, and then I
remember they're all in line. Everyone is in line. Yes. It was such a weird thing. Seeing them in line, I remember it was like, that's weird.
It's like, you fucking work SummerSlam against Hunter. Mm-hmm. Like, you're in line for a promo? I was kind of like baffled by that. I was almost like, Jesus. I remember the last match on the card was me and Conway and Croft versus, I believe, JD.
Was Jack Bull in that maybe?
No.
Okay. He might have been in my match, actually.
I think maybe JD Dinsmore and God, I can't remember who the last person was. It may have been Dirty Money. I can't remember. But I remember we had a match, and it was just a regular 6-man tag.
All those were on the fly matches, cold
on
matches.
The fly, and I'm like, maybe, he'll give us some opportunity. And then I remember getting like jealous of Croft, because Croft literally went to him and was like, hey, like, I'm good now. Is it cool, like... What do I have to do?
He kind of had a little bit of a drug problem and everything, and that's why he got released.
He rehired him on the spot. Yeah. And I was just like, again, I was very happy. You told me about your thing. I think we went to the buffet after, and I was just like, I kind of...
We did go to the buffet. I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Because I remember I sent a text to the ex-girlfriend just to let her know that I'd been rehired. And... I remember she goes, I'll never forget it. She sent a message. She goes, I always believed in you. I knew you were going to do it. And I was just like, but it was what it was. So
I remember I wept, and I was just like, but that was crazy. But then, that was,
and I think, that kind of, and then that leads eventually to me getting rehired and, moving to FCW and starting that chapter of my career. So,
yeah.
We'll save that for another time, though.
All right. This has been Conversations with the Big Guy. We're going to promote FeedMeMore.com, promote WrestleProOnline.com for New York, New Jersey independent needs, CreatorProWrestling.com. I'm Buck Never Stops on Twitter.
I am the Big Guy Ryback, and you've just listened to an episode of The Conversation with the Big Guy. Thank you.